Welcome to the 5:30 p.m. September 22nd City Council special meeting relating to proposed budget for fiscal year 2023. We do have a quorum, so I will try that again. Call this meeting to order. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? And the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, is it the truth? City Clerk, would you please read the rules to speak?
Yes, individuals wishing to speak on agenda items must complete a sign-up card prior to the item being introduced. Sign-up cards are available on the table in the council chamber. Comments made under public comment must relate directly to the agenda items. No sign-up card is required. Citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak on all agenda items. All sign-up cards and exhibits being submitted to the City Council shall be placed in the box on the table in the chamber.
Thank you very much. City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. I'm just going to get on with the presentation. Unfortunately, it was 28 slides, and Mr. Abate wanted a little bit more detail, so it's 163.
Yeah, 160.
So this is the final public hearing for the FY 2023 annual operating budget and capital budget. It's a public hearing. So this was the strategic goals and objectives that were established by City Council from your community meeting held on 19 February 2022. This is the budget process. We presented a budget to you on the 29th of July. The proposed budget was 7.2145 mils with a voted debt millage of 0.2542. At the workshop on 16 August, I proposed to decrease the millage down to 6.9812 mils. The first public hearing was held on the 14th, and this is your final public hearing. These are the ordinances that will be read at the end of the presentation. Next slide. Both at the first and final public hearing, City Council must adopt its millage rate before it adopts its operating and capital budgets. The public may speak and ask questions before the City Council adopts any of the proposed budget-related ordinances. This is a summary of the proposed budget. You can see that 60% of the $121 million budget is generated through charges of service, and approximately 20% is derived from property taxes. This is the expenditures, the three big expenditures with your overall budget, public safety being 27%, water resources at 20%, and then public works at 17%. This will be by Florida statute 200.065, required to be read publicly. The City of Titusville, Florida is the taxing authority. 6.3573 is the rolled back millage rate. The operating millage rate is to be levied is at 6.9812 mils. The percent increase over the rolled back rate is 9.81%, which is characterized as a tax increase. The voted millage rate to be levied is 0.245 mils. The voted debt millage rate is to be levied at 0.52542 mils. The FY 2023 budget is built at an operating millage of 6.9812 mils, which is 10% above the previous year's revenue per Chapter 74430. During the public hearing, City Council must discuss the percentage increase of millage over the rollback rate, if any, to find the general fund budget and purposes for which the ad valorem tax revenues are being increased. Here are comments from the public regarding the increase in the ad valorem revenues and the millage rate. The FY 2023 budget is proposed at 6.9812 mils, which is 9.81 above the rollback rate of 6.3573 mils, generating 2.17 million additional revenues over the FY 2022 adopted budget for ad valorem. The proposed budget uses these additional dollars to fund half of the FY 2022 citywide pay plan and introduces a 5.4% COLA to bring the positions closer to the market and attract and retain the best in-class workforce. It also funds additional public safety staffing requirements and equipment and funds increases to the cost of consumables due to inflationary pressures. On to your general fund, your revenues. You'll see that 39% of your revenues are generated from property taxes. Next slide. Of your general fund operating budget of $50 million, public safety, you'll see in there is 47% of that budget. This is a good list to be at the bottom of. This is the comparison of the millage rates of other cities around us. It's ordered by the per capita, per citizen capita. So if you look, Cocoa Beach is the highest per capita, and we are fourth from the bottom, with West Melbourne being the lowest. Presented graphically, you can see the difference in the per capita ad valorem taxes. The property tax house that we demonstrate every year to show council where the taxes are going. We raised the actual tax house to a value of $229,200. It is an exempted tax house of $50,000, homesteaded house. The total applied rate of 7.354 includes the operating millage rate of 6.8912 and the debt service millage rate of 0.52542. So if you look at the top left, Brevard County School Board equates to 33% of your taxes. City of Titusville is 38.67, and Brevard County is 19.45%. And then the other MSTU and special taxing is listed. So the total tax bill on an exempted house of $229,000 is approximately $3,351 a year. On to utility rate changes. Next slide. The stormwater and solid waste collections are all proposed to be increased of 8.3%. And you'll see the impacts for stormwater. The annual residential impact is $7.57. For solid waste, it's an annual impact of $12. And for recycling, it's an annual impact of $1.20. Rate comparisons of a single family for stormwater. You'll see we're in the middle of the pack of our surrounding cities with our current and proposed, and this does not take into account changes that any of these cities may be doing during their budget processes. Next slide. Solid waste residential. You'll see that our solid waste are on the low end of our surrounding cities. The existing is the second bar, with the proposed being the third bar from the left. This is a commercial dumpster, Titusville existing and proposed. And I think the county has a substantial increase coming, so that'll probably push us further to the left. On to water. This is for a 5,000 gallon usage of a 3/4 inch water main. The proposed monthly increase at 3% is $2.61. Next slide. For a commercial 3/4 inch at 5,000 gallons, that increase, the 3% increase is $3.31. On to a typical commercial. This is a large commercial at a foot and a half. It's 3% equates to $23.31 a month. Rate comparison, we are still in the middle of the pack. And as noted at the previous bar graphs, our comparison with our surrounding cities does not take into account any of the adjustments that they may be going through during their budget processes. That completes my briefing. Here's the action items for council to consider. FY 2023, adopt a millage rate of 6.9812, which generates an ad valorem revenue in the amount of $2,169,039 over the FY22 adopted budget. You can make additional changes to the budget, but in order to do so, you'll have to offset with a reduction of something else or make no changes to the proposed budget. With that, City Attorney will read the ordinances.
Ordinance number 31, 2022, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, providing for the millage for the operation of the City of Titusville and voted debt service levy for fiscal year 2023 and providing for an effective date. Ordinance number 32, 2022, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, adopting the general and related budgets of the City of Titusville for the fiscal year 2023 and providing for an effective date. Ordinance number 33, 2022, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending Section 21-241-3 of the Code of Ordinances by amending and increasing the schedule of rates and charges for water and sewer service, providing for findings, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. Ordinance number 34, 2022, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, amending Section 16-116 of the Code of Ordinances by amending and establishing an increase to the residential monthly charge for solid waste, recycling, and additional cart fees, and by amending Section 16-117 of the Code of Ordinances by amending and establishing an increase to the commercial dumpster and commercial can monthly charges for solid waste and recycling fees, and increasing the commercial dumpster rental fees, and by amending Section 16-118 of the Code of Ordinances by amending and establishing an increase in the extra charges for special services, and by amending Section 16-119 of the Code of Ordinances by clarifying, amending, and establishing the amounts for container deposit, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinances, an effective date, and incorporation into the code. Ordinance number 35, 2022, an ordinance of the City of Titusville, Florida, adopting the Enterprise Fund and Capital Improvements Program budgets of the City of Titusville for the fiscal year 2023 and providing for an effective date.
So Mayor, what's next is for you to open the public hearing on the budget and related ordinances and take feedback from this public and then move forward to adopt.
Mayor, I would suggest opening the public hearings on the millage and budget, which is ordinance number 31, 2022, and ordinance 32, 2022, and of course allow speakers to speak as to both ordinances at this time. We'll discuss them, and then you will vote on each of these ordinances separately.
And just to clarify, what happened last time was we would talk on 1A and 1B, 31, 2022, 32, 2022, and then we would have, after we call the cards, we would then go into the council motion and vote.
That's,
And we will do these two separately?
yes, every ordinance
we'll-
will be voted on separately.
Okay, and then, so we'll just do that way. All right, then call the cards. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a question of procedure. Because we actually called out what the millage was and everything based on the agenda, if we just read what the agenda says, is that acceptable? Or do we have to say what the millage is?
When you adopt the millage ordinance, you would
Right.
state what millage you are adopting it at.
So you just said that we have to read more than what's on the agenda.
Yes, for example, it would be a motion to approve ordinance 31, 2022, adopting a millage rate of,
Okay, that's
which,
what I need to
which is a percentage above the rollback rate of mills. I could provide, I have a sample motion if you would
Please.
like that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that'd probably be helpful. Anything else?
Of course, these are blank, because I don't know what you'll do, but this is just a form.
Robinson, were you going to say something? No? Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were going to say something.
Yeah, that's the issue we had last week. Yeah.
Okay, then, we can call the cards on number 31, 2022, and number 32, 2022 together. And I would assume if they want to speak on both, they will have 3 minutes for each. Let's go ahead and get that started. Call the cards, please.
Trenton Mansfield,
My name's Trenton Mansfield, Pentax Avenue. City of Titusville resident. Last time I spoke a little bit on the rental rates. I believe it's 36% of Titusville rents, and their homes are not homesteaded. So that means their rent will end up going up because of this rate. I've done my research, and I believe the highest was just about 9.5% for inflation a couple months ago. If you go all the way back to the 70s, when inflation was over 14% for, I think, 2 years or 3 years when Carter was president, and then when Reagan became president, it started to dwindle down. But I don't believe the city raised taxes as high as you're proposing to raise them this year. So I don't know what's going on as far as now and then, but I'm assuming that we still tax the same way that we did back then, and why are we raising it up so high? But mainly, as I spoke last time, this isn't going to affect me. I come up here for the average Joe that can't necessarily come up here, maybe, and maybe they don't know, and the rent is going to go up. Rent has gone up drastically over the past 2 years, and it's going to go up again because citizens, tenants rent, and the renter is in the business to make money. Obviously, they're not here for just giving out, their property and so that's all I got to say. I'm not going to beat the dead horse that I beat last time, but, I didn't get to speak much on the rent last time, but that's big. So I would like y'all to take that in consideration, and the inflation back in the past, and then the city has never raised almost 10%, and inflation was 5% higher back then. So just take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Trenton. Next card, please.
Dwight Severs.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Dwight Severs. At the last meeting, I expressed concern about the 10 or 9.81% tax increase. Became interested primarily in looking at my own tax and noticed that it was going to go up 13.5%. I suggested and asked if you were going to look at and increase other general fund revenue sources on page 57 through page 60 of your budget that I looked at online by the same or equivalent percentage. I gave you examples. I've heard no response to that. I asked if you were going to reduce some of the general fund expenses on page 61 through 63 of the budget, and I received no response to that. I did stress at the last meeting that the impact primarily would be on the retirement community, and in discussions during the last meeting with your staff and others, there seemed to suggest that many residential property owners may have a tax decrease. I think all of you probably saw the article in the newspaper about the percentage of Brevard County-wide. Out of curiosity, going on to the tax assessor's office, I started the south end of the city arbitrarily on a map, chose a lot, had no idea what was on the lot, and you will see them listed in this the first page I handed out to you. The average increase, and I excluded from that the Indian River Avenue near City Hall property and the apartment complex, the average in the city of Titusville was 31.42% increase in assessed value. I did the same thing essentially for business and industrial properties. And I thought I wanted to see how they were being impacted because of the valuations. You can see the list that I've given to you, and the average increase on business and industrial properties from 21 to 22 is 3.9%, significantly different than that of residential. So my concern, as I expressed to you at the last meeting, was that this illustrates that residential properties primarily will be carrying a lot of the tax burden as such, as reflected. And for residential property owners, thank goodness for the constitutional amendment, Save Our Homes. Otherwise, it would be a lot worse. But I feel for those individuals that have recently bought property, bought a different house in Titusville, they have the inflated value and not the benefit of Save Our Homes. So you can see from this, and this was done randomly because I was just curious. In addition, at the last meeting, I discussed the zone. I said I was aware of some of the successes of the zone, and I pointed out, I believe, major issues and suggested that economically, Titusville is in a different position today than it was 10 years ago. In addition, I pointed out that that's when I urged Mayor Tully to support the zone at that time. I believe it is time to relook at the zone, particularly because of the diversion of $822,000 in this budget, and even larger amounts in future years more than likely, and the desperate need the general fund has for tax dollars to support public safety and other important things of the city. I know the zone is represented by the county attorney's office. However, that does not excuse some of the major issues that have occurred, and the city can withdraw from the zone at any time, provided adequate protection is in place for payment of outstanding debt. I have no clue what that outstanding debt, it may be so large you're going to have the zone for umpty-ump years. I don't know. Do you know? Do you really know? And do you really know what's being approved? I hope that you do not shrink or ignore your clear responsibilities to the overwhelming majority of the residents of Titusville. I realize there is a clear power struggle and structure in Titusville that's trying to control the council, staff, and various boards and commissions in directing growth and development, and maybe even deriving some personal benefit and profit from it. As such, I would hope you would do the right thing for your citizens who consistently support the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Severs. Any other cards?
Stan Johnston.
Stan Johnston, 860 Poinsett Avenue. I don't understand why I'm here. I mean, you should be answering Mr. Severs' questions. It seems like you're treating Mr. Severs like you're treating me. I can't believe it, that you would treat him that way, because here he started out with saying he referred you to pages 50-something, and your response was no response. Your response tonight is no response. 62 to 63. He mentioned to you no response. He's asking for you to respond. You don't do anything. And then he talks about percent citywide something. He went, and there was, guess again, what? Your response was what? The same thing. So I'm looking in the budget, the transportation and so forth. Where is it in the budget? Where's the budget about me going? Where are you sending me? Is it Martha's Vineyard? I would rather go Honolulu if you send me somewhere, but Martha's Vineyard, I think that's out. But let's look seriously about what's going on. Is that he talked about something, average home value 31.42%, and the commercial businesses increased 3.9%. That speaks loudly of some of what's going on. It says some things like it says our dependence upon the Space Coast. big time. It talks about difference in residential value property and commercial value property. It says something. It talks about the tax burden. And it seems that what was council's response and city manager's response? Unbelievable. It's the same as if I were here. I can't believe it. You treat him the same way. Well, maybe that's okay. That's all right. But I think y'all should remember that just a few years ago, and it was sent by the police officers. Police officers, the organization, I'm not sure what you call it. They sent a video of a council meeting. It was maybe I don't know. Mr. Diesel was here, and it was about January, February of 1819, and it talks about the word. 27 minutes at the end of the period, it talked about bankruptcy and OPEB. This has to do with debt servicing, and it says it's a very serious issue, and we're putting millions and millions forward. And then at the end of the year, it turns out we didn't put the millions of dollars that we said we were going to do. So council and city manager and so forth are not answering questions, and it's not the right thing to do. You should be, in other words, when we have a public meeting, it's not just to hear or just, actually it's more like those three monkeys. You hear no evil, see no evil, and something like something else. Deaf, dumb, and whatever, blind. Because there was no response. In other words, when he spoke, nothing. In other words, next person speak. It's surprising what's going on here, because, in other words, a public meeting is supposed to be, we're supposed to have some kind of a answering of questions, but it's not happening. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is. For example, I've told you all about a survey that's bad for over a year, and it's on public documents and so forth. The city does nothing about it. No response. Mr. Severs also talked about the zone. And he mentioned the desperate need for support of public safety, and that you could drop out at any time, and how much money you would get and so forth you could support public safety. And so he was asking the question is why doesn't the city join it? So what was city's answer? What was Mr. What's his name? Larice's answer? I don't know. I didn't hear it. Oh, the answer was no answer. I don't know why Mr. Seaver is coming here. I just talked to him before the meeting. I said, why are you talking? It doesn't seem like they're listening to you. He was in agreement with that. What are we here for? So, in other words, we're having a budget hearing that's really not a budget hearing. It's a matter of formality of adopting a budget without public input because you're not considering our input. And he closed with saying about doing the right thing. Well, I'm talking to you about something that you're not doing the right thing. Absolutely not doing the right thing. And when I leave this. When I go down and sit down, you know what? You're not going to comment about what I spoke about or what Mr. Seaver spoke about. You'll just go about on your way. This is not government. This is not government of the people, by the people, for the people. This is government of the city, by the city, and for the city. This is not truth and justice. This is something else. It's not for the public. It's money for somebody else. Let's see, I've got, about 10 seconds left?
5 seconds. 4.
How about if I ask for another minute? I'll ask for another minute.
You got double time right there. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Okay. Honolulu, not Martha's Vineyard.
Honolulu. Next card, please.
We don't have any other cards.
Okay, thank you very much. Council? Anything over here? Okay, council?
And I just saw someone raising their hand. I didn't know if
Nathan Slusher's in the parking lot. He would like to speak of the city.
But we're going to go on, and he can certainly speak as soon as he gets in here. Thank you. Member Nelson, he may
Okay.
still get here in time.
Mr. Tom. So we had a conversation about an hour the other day about the budget. And some of Mr. Seaver's questions got answered in that. And I know one of the thing was, we were talking about miscellaneous expenses, why certain things were higher in the budget this year than last year. And we talked about the house, remember the house? And what was the impact this year on that house versus last year? And we talked about how we had already reduced the budget once to try to sort things in and keep it in. So can you talk to us about all those items? I know I should have made a list.
Mr. Severs brought up a couple of items that we discussed. One of them was an increase, he noticed, of 18% in travel and per diem. And the reason for that is past several years, we've been, battling COVID, and we've done virtually all of our training and conferences virtually. And now that we're able to start sending our people out to conferences and travel and professional development, you're going to see the travel budget increase to more normalized level pre-pandemic. Another item that he had mentioned was that IT services went up 28%. And part of that is that we're currently doing a cybersecurity study. And we believe that the findings of the study, which will be presented to the council toward the end of the year, will indicate the need for some serious upgrades to our cybersecurity. And we budgeted $150,000 for such items as firewall enhancements, hardware, et cetera, personnel, and consulting to ensure that we can safeguard our financial services.
Keep us safe, keep us from being hacked.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's, something a threat that all cities and governments are experiencing, that threat. With regard to the homesteaded, Mr. Severs brought out the point that, yes, your assessed value may have increased significantly. However, with the 3% cap on homesteaded properties and us reducing the millage from current by 3.5%, those properties that are actually homesteaded will receive a very slight decrease, where you're not
talking
protected.
We're talking about the house that you
Right.
build every year.
For the tax from the city. Now,
Okay,
for those properties that are not homesteaded, which includes, people that have homes that they rent out, the cap is 10%. So that will be an increase. And,
Okay.
we don't control the rents, but I think what the gentleman who spoke was referring to the fact that the homeowner will pass that on in the form of a rent increase. That's something we can't control.
Yeah.
But it is a slight decrease for the majority of homes which are homesteaded.
okay. We were also talking, well, I saw the other day, what would happen if we got the grant for the firefighters?
Yeah, our plan as we talked about during the budget workshop is, we had split the pay plan into two because of lowering the millage rate. If the grant is approved, we'd requested a $1.4 million grant to cover bringing on 9 firefighters and their equipment. If it is actually awarded to the city, we plan to attempt to finish that pay plan during this budget year.
Okay. And the other thing we talked about was the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. And this is probably a Richard question. He's like, gee. There's a question, yeah. So can you explain to everybody how that actually works and what the process is to get a project approved?
Well, that depends on the project. Again, the North Brevard Economic Development Zone is a dependent district under the county, and they have a TIF. We also contribute a TIF, as was referenced, to that board. If they want to utilize our TIF above a certain value, they have to come have council approve the project that they want to utilize those TIF monies for.
Okay.
And it's for economic development. again, that can come to a presentation. They have various grant programs, as my understanding, one of which is a strategic initiatives program for infrastructure, but it's all related to economic development.
So part of the mall was also an infrastructure project, correct?
That's correct. You're talking about Titus Landing. Yes,
Titus
that was one of the
Landings.
projects they did many years ago, which was a zone project. And the city received a loan for that because the zone was new at the time, and we pay that and we get reimbursed from the zone for that project. That's correct.
Okay. And so it goes before the zone and they have to do a presentation, correct?
That's correct. It has to be approved through the zone. They have criteria for each grant.
Okay.
And the zone would have to decide whether or not they've met the criteria of their economic development program for the particular grant they want. And if they meet that criteria, then yes, it would be approved. One of the projects that was talked about was the sewer project, and yes, that had to be approved by the zone, also the Brevard County Commissioners and the City of Titusville.
Okay. So basically, it was a project which kept people from using septic tanks in that area next to the river, correct?
Correct. Well, all three boards found that it was a public purpose for economic development because approximately 450 acres down south could not be developed because there wasn't a sewer. And if they wanted to develop residentially, it would require septic tanks.
Okay.
So yes, that project went through the zone for approval and then the Board of County Commissioners and then the City of Titusville, because if they want to use any of our TIF portion that is in the zone, it has to get your approval based on the dollar amount.
And Mr. Seavers is right, we could back out of the zone probably pretty much any time. But
Yeah.
that would be a policy
Correct.
decision.
It's a policy
to make.
decision whether you want to continue to participate in that. That's correct. Now, if our monies have been assigned to debt, we would have to take care of that debt.
Correct.
But you could terminate with the understanding that you would have to still make sure that debt is secured to.
I will say this, we were out campaigning many years ago, not that many years ago. But we ran into a gentleman who works for the EDC in Volusia County. And I remember talking to him and he told us, we cannot compete with Titusville. We cannot compete with the North Brevard area. So I see us growing and I see us getting additional industry in the area, which is good because every time something happened to the Space Center, I'm not quite as old as you, but I'm fairly old. I mean, I remember that we would just shut down. So I don't want to see that happen. And you might be right, at some point it might be worth talking about. But I don't think that, well, today's not the appropriate time anyway. But I have to say, I think the zone has made our area a little bit more foolproof against, the devastation of a space center shutting down. So,
Thank you very much. That certainly hit a lot of the questions that were asked. Vice Mayor.
Yeah. Since this is going to be my last budget meeting, of course, I had a lot of concerns about some of the things that I heard, and we all respect Mr. Seavers, for sure. I just happen to disagree with him. And I'm starting with the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. Since I was part of that as secretary for many, many years, yeah, I was one of the original ones. This was a tool that helped Titusville. This was a tool that helped North Brevard. If we want the status quo, we will die. If you know anything about business, you have to invest in the future. It's simple. If you want the city to die, then stop doing economic development. Just stop. And what you will find is those who have come here will be leaving. The reason why developers are coming to Titusville is because they see that we are proactive in wanting them to be here. And the reason why this council has agreed to a lot of the development, smart development, and may I add that because of the development, it pushed us into making sure that we had a LID. Think about it. You know, if we didn't have development, we would never be talking about trees. We would never be talking about how we should develop. It would sadden me after we all have gone through the downturn of the shuttle program. I was part of it. I spent 32 years there, and then they kicked me to the curb, right? And they kicked a lot of us to the curb, and we even had 60 Minutes to come here, and they said we're dead. But because of economic development, we showed them. And so I am very proud of this council. I'm very proud that we are thinking to the future. And I think we will be doing our citizens a disservice if we don't think about the future. And the only way you can think about the future is to make sure that there are going to be things here for our kids. We all want our kids to come back to Titusville. And all I'm hearing from people is, wow, Titusville is a very fertile place for me to put my business. We can't stop that. We don't want to stop that. So I would entrust in you all as I leave this place that you do not make a decision of getting rid of a tool that has actually made us look good. We always were the red-headed stepchild in Brevard County. We're not that anymore. People want, I mean, I go to a lot of meetings down south. I built my charter school down south. But I can tell you, people want to come this way. The only thing that's stopping them is we really don't have a lot of land left to develop anything, unfortunately. And I've always felt that if we are to do anything as a council, as servants of the people, we are to take care of what we have and to improve on what we have. And I think we've done that at least on the 4 years that I've been on council. I was looking because, you know, one of the things that we always do is we look at ourselves when it comes down to how much I have to pay. Well, this is not bragging on myself or my family or Karen's part as it relates to what we're paying in taxes, but I'm willing to bet you there's no one in this room that's paying more taxes than me. And yet, I'm willing to pay more. I'm willing to pay more because I love this city. I mean, I moved here in 1991, started my career in 1979 at the Space Center, and decided to move here in 1991. Thank God my house is paid for. But what I didn't realize was once you pay for your house, you still have to pay taxes. I didn't know that. You know, I figured I'm finished paying for my house, that's going to be it. But, you know, I pay over almost $50,000 in insurance alone. You talk about the taxes for my two industrial businesses that I have, plus my home, thousands and thousands of dollars. And yet I will never complain about living in Titusville and living in America, because things are so much worse in other places for sure. We have done well. And I really appreciate people when they push back on us. But I'm telling you, as a council, we need to push back and say, we're doing the right thing. Our speaker talked about we're not doing it for the citizens, we're doing it for Titusville. Exactly. Titusville are the people. That's why we represent Titusville, the people, to do the right thing. And by the way, there's a little thing called inflation. There's a little thing about when you're operating a business, resources are expensive. Everybody wants police and fire, but nobody wants to pay that extra when somebody walk out the door because the sheriff department is paying more or Orange County is paying more. And when you need them and they're not there, the first question is always asked, why don't you have that resource? And the answer has to be, well, you didn't want an increase in your taxes. I really feel that what we have here, we should be pretty proud. And by the way, I need to say this so Mr. Sievers understand, we all had conversations because of what he presented. We all had conversations about what he had in his letter. I got a copy of it. I wasn't here, but we went through the whole letter. And what I realized was, from his point of view, he may feel he's right, but in America, you can feel you're right all you want. I can feel I'm right. But the bottom line is, who's going to make the decision up here? Who's going to be strong enough to do the right things for our citizens and our future citizens? And that's us. And we've done a really good job. We are a good team. We're reasonable people. We do what's right, and we don't do what's selfish. And so in order for us as a city and neighbors, we got to take care of our own. The county's not going to take care of us. The city has to do what the city needs to do to not only maintain, but to also make sure we can go to the next level. And just as we did just get the grant, and I applaud the fire chief for writing the grant and getting the grant, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We need that money. The purpose of the municipality is not like the purpose of a business. The purpose of a business is to make money. What the city is supposed to do is make sure they have enough revenue to take care of its people. And for us to say, no, we're not going to do that, but we're just going to try to do the status quo, is going to cause a lot of problems in the long run. When you talk about water and sewer, it costs. What we didn't talk about was the chemicals that's required to keep our water pure. You don't talk about the infrastructure that is extremely expensive. When you try to upgrade infrastructure, you're talking millions of dollars, not thousands, millions of dollars. When you talk about insurance, millions of dollars. We're in a building here that everybody says, we don't need another building. I've told you, we need another building. We have done well with what we have, but we got to have a vision for the future. Without a vision, the people perish. And we are not going to perish. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would say, Stan, you noted that a lot of there's silence hither, there, and yonder. When we ask staff questions, that's a good way to answer your question, and I think it's been that discussion. I did not and have not said much about the North Brevard Economic Zone because I don't see it as pertinent to our budget discussion because there's going to be no cutting of that all of a sudden because we're just going to get rid of it here in the next week. I can tell you that I don't have a vote on that board. I sit as a liaison on that board, and I can tell you that I'm very impressed with the people on that zone, board, whatever we call it. There's no rubber stamp there. There are some serious debates back and forth about this is good, this is bad, and I hear it all the time from various members. What's best for the city of Titusville? What's best for North Brevard? So I have no problem with what they're doing and what they're trying to do. And I wasn't there for all this beginning stuff and all the things and the reason it came about. And hats off to you, Mr. Severs, as you noted you were for it at that time. So I'm not going to get into a big discussion. I certainly didn't expect during this budget debate to get into the North Brevard Economic Zone. So that's why I haven't said a whole heck of a lot about it. I think it's an excellent board, have done amazing things, many, many before I even knew what it was. With that said, let me go in order here, Member Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of questions. One, I did read the Florida statutes, and it does talk about certain things and taking, doing competitive bidding and all of that. So I know a background of what some of the things that is being talked about, and the staff knows that I'm always asking questions about making sure things are bidded out and we get. And I also know that one in that area, as running a nonprofit in Titusville and Brevard County, but especially in Titusville, my goal for the community of Titusville was to keep the resources, including money, whatever it was, in Titusville. So with that being said, that's basically all I want to talk about on that. I know that it's everything, what the Florida statute says, and I think that if anything is going on and we put money, Titusville money into any project, we should know that it's being handled right. And I think that the attorney gave us the guidelines and how we can do that. So for the future, we will look in that. As far as the budget is concerned, my question is that explain to me, Tom, if you will, or explain to us, if what happens if the property value goes down over the next year or so with our tax? Please share that with us.
You're saying if the property values go down,
Yes.
well, then the millage rate probably would go up
Okay.
in order to raise the same amount of revenue. Because as you know, operating city government, for the most part, the costs increase over time.
But just so if the property value go down,
Millage will go up.
that is not a big guarantee that the millage rate is going to go down.
That's correct.
As well.
That's correct.
Because the city still has to
Pays bills.
operate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We still have to have the revenue to operate. So this is kind of a process that is tied in with growth in itself. If we want to continue to grow. And I know that there is that thought that Titusville has grown enough, but the future still lies out in the future, and there will still be some more growth, and we have to be able to be competitive as far as hiring the right staff, keeping the right staff on board, and paying them salaries that is competitive in other cities. So, and for us to do all of that, it's some hard decisions that has to be made. Also, we are, if I could send a message to all of the owners, the renter, the landlords out there, I hope that you do what we try to do here as city council members, working for the people in this city. Just because your your monthly water bill or yearly tax go up a couple of $100, you don't raise the your tenant's rent just because of that. I know that you have to keep your bills in line, but always keep the tenant, because their salaries don't necessarily increase as the inflation goes up. So looking at the budget, taking everything that has been said in consideration, listening to staff about the cost of going to traveling and paying mileage and so forth, all of those things. Coming out of the 2 years of the pandemic, it's a lot of things that has to be adjusted to get us back to, I won't use the word normal, but a new normal, because we have to look at the world a little different, because we have electric cars. Fortunately, to my chagrin, that the city don't own any right now, and
We could change that.
but looking at all of that and hearing what the staff, we had conversations, like it has been said, with staff about every thought that was brought up by the public, and we wanted answers to those questions and thoughts. And I believe that staff has given me answers that satisfies the concern of our citizens to the best of our ability.
Member Nelson.
Member Jordan made me think of something.
Oh, that's not.
That's bad. I had several conversations over the last year with people from the water department, and not Sean, but other people. And we had conversations about what happened to our infrastructure And why do we have a lot of aging infrastructure, especially in the downtown and the older areas? And what they were saying to me, and some of these people served on council, was that after the sewer spill in 1993, that council did not want to spend any money on infrastructure. So our infrastructure is aging, and now we're in a position of having to play catch up. And I understand that some of the pipes are actually clay pipes, which are apparently fairly decent. But I'm sure that some of those pipes are cast iron, and it's probably not helping the lagoon. So when we sit down and look at it, we can't spend 10 years, 15 years saying, oh, we can't raise taxes because, we have to realize that infrastructure has to keep going, and we have to keep replacing it, because some of the stuff, my guess, is probably 50, 60 years old. And that's got to be close to the end of its lifespan. So I think for the lagoon, for our water sources, that's something we really need to keep working on. And we can't turn around and say, we can't raise taxes because we have to realize we got to keep going. So that's just a thought that I had as you were talking about it. Yeah.
That's the thought I think we've had a lot. When we had some things happen, I think the word infrastructure was used an awful lot, and without great detail, because we're rehashing an entire 4 years worth of work here. City manager, we're working on infrastructure on a regular basis. So when I hear we need to start working on that, that's not where we're at.
Yes, sir.
I mean, because if we are, then I'm misinformed, and as I understand it, we're constantly, matter of fact, I think on Indian River Avenue in the last month, we were working on infrastructure.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Can I take that back and say there were a number of years we did not work on it, and we have been working on it. But
'cause-
you're behind. To me, we're always behind the eight
We're always
ball.
working on it too.
Yeah. So,
Member Stokel.
Yeah, to your guys' point, I'm not gonna, I agree with everything you guys were saying. For me, when I'm looking at the budget, I feel like it's pick your battle, because we're not going to make everyone happy, and I don't think anybody likes to raise taxes. And so I'd rather deal with the complaints of that versus we don't do it, and we go back to the 1993 timeframe, and then we start getting complaints on infrastructure, or why is there a pothole? Why aren't you repaving my road? Why, when we call the police, does it take them so long to get here? Why is the community not safe? Like, to me, that's what I feel like the challenging part of sitting up here is we know we have to make those tough decisions. So anytime, like, I see the budget coming forward like this, and I've told the city manager this, I'd much rather make small incremental changes than us to defer, and then see what I've seen other communities do, and which is have a huge increase, which especially people on fixed incomes, making that big jump, it's like what do you do at that point? Versus having these smaller incremental changes to keep up with pace, to keep us being able to give quality services to the citizens. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And we're going to call that last card, I think, is going to get the last word. Nathan? I know that's out of order and everything, but he was rushing.
Forgive me for running through the parking lot. I was in between
appreciate you
service
being
calls and had to make it over. For the record, Nathan Sausher at 860 Allendale Street. I don't think there's anyone in this room that wants these guys more funded than me. All right? We're in here discussing a $121 million budget. We should, in 2022, be discussing a $250 million budget. We're up here talking about competing with Orlando or Daytona or some of the bigger cities. Our populations don't correlate. So as long as we only rely on taxes, their funding will always be behind. We will always be looking at Orange County or Volusia County or Miami-Dade County to take our people because they can pay more. At what point do we do something differently? the way I see it, we are currently in the third quarter, and I know I'm using a football term, but this is hilarious. First quarter, Saturn projects. The city came, we raised taxes, we kept them the same. We raised taxes, we kept them the same. Quarter ended. Shuttle quarter. Second quarter came around. We raised taxes, we keep it the same. We raised taxes, we keep it the same. That quarter's over. We're now in the third quarter where we're looking at private companies taking off. At what point do we change what we're doing? Sorry. I've heard it more than once today, and I sat back there and I was actually trying to be empathetic and listen and understand what you guys are saying. This city needs, it does not need taxes and more taxes. What it does need is revenue. So my question, and I see I have got more time than I anticipated. My question for you guys is, what is going to be your tax legacy? Some of you are leaving soon. Thank you for everything you've done. Some of you will be here a lot longer. What is your tax legacy going to be? What are people going to think about you when they think about Mr. Robert Jordan when he left? Were we only increasing taxes, or were we only conserving high taxes from last year? What were we doing here? We need our city funded, but if all we care about is taking money from the citizens, instead of creating new funding opportunities for the city, then we're not actually going to get these guys funded better than Orlando. And that bothers me, because I would love for this city to compete with Orlando and Miami and Jacksonville and Tampa. You talk about infrastructure, but if all we care about is property taxes, we're not going to fix the infrastructure. We're going to get into this cycle where 40 years from now, the next council will be saying the same thing. So I know I'm still a little amped up because I was working and I rushed over here. But at what point do we change? Because we've talked about 7.2, we've talked about 6.9, and Dr. Stoker, you did talk about going to the rollback rate. And not once have I heard anybody say, let's reduce taxes for our citizens in the middle of an economic crisis and create new funding for our city. They don't have to correlate. You can do both. The leadership of the city can do both. There's millions and billions of dollars running through this county. And all we're doing is trying to argue and debate, not argue, but debate over how much the city is going to take from the citizens. Instead of taking things, why don't we come up with a new plan? So I encourage you to do that, to think about your tax legacy. What are people going to think about you next year? Because there will always be an excuse to take the easy road. Last year it was material costs and building costs that went through the roof. I remember that. It affected me dramatically. This year it's inflation. Next year it will be something else. There will always be an excuse. So I request that the council come up with a new plan to fund the city more. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Slusser. Go. I know you're hyped up and everything.
Yeah, I am. I was on Tropic Street cutting grass and rushed over here.
It's okay. You know I like you a lot, right? But we are doing something. It's called development. Development brings on new jobs. Jobs allow those people to pay more taxes. It also allows people to buy homes. And when they buy homes, they stay here and they buy things in the city. The city can't open a new business. But what the city can do is make it as easy as we can to those who want to bring industry here. Industry begets people. People are the one that brings on the taxes. And if we have more people in the city, then you can spread the taxes around and you don't have to increase the taxes as much. That's what we're doing. So we are doing more. We've done a whole lot more in the last 4 or 5 years with development. And that's what's going to allow us to flourish. Okay?
Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
all due respect, sir, I absolutely understand what you're saying, okay? I get that you're trying to disperse the tax liability across more people. But as more people come, we need the equal amount of more resources. That balance will never go one way or another. Because if we have 10,000 more people here, we need a fire department and a police department that can afford to take care of 10,000 more people.
Right.
So if you're talking about commercial development, that's a great argument. I could understand that argument. The city can't open businesses, but what the city does have is resources we can leverage to make money. We don't have to open businesses. We've got a website. We've got all kinds of stuff that, oh, I apologize. I'm fired up today, man. I've been going all day.
Good?
I hear where you are.
I understand what you're saying to disperse it. I really do. But I do not believe in my heart that you will ever beat that balancing act of disbursement, because the more people come in, the more services we have, the more pipes we have to age. It's never going to go away.
All right, let me cut you there because we'd all agree on all of that.
Okay.
But I would say, and you did say the one thing about businesses coming in, you wouldn't argue that. Well, I can tell you, I don't like to use the name, but there's a chicken restaurant that we keep trying to get in here. And one of the things they keep talking about is our demographics. I don't know how many more people we got to get here before they decide we've got the right demographics. But we don't get to control the private sector, and we don't get to go out and, I was an athletic director for a long time, and I expected every team to have a fundraiser, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, we've got to do what we're doing, and I agree with Vice Mayor that we're doing the right things. Nobody wants to raise taxes. I don't pay taxes like he pays taxes, but I pay average taxes. And I don't want, but that's got nothing to do with me. I don't want anybody to feel, gosh, I can't wait to come here to budget hearings and raise taxes. Boy, that's a lot of fun. I don't want to do that. So let us go forward. Nate, it's great to see you. I appreciate you being here. Take a deep breath when you can run in here. All right, brother. Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance number 31-2022, adopting of a millage rate of 6.9812 mills, which is 9.81% above the rollback rate of 6.3573 mills, and to adopt the tentative voted depth service millage at 0.2542 mills.
Second.
Good?
We good?
Mayor, I'd just like to point out the ordinance will reflect that the percentage by which the millage rate exceeds the rollback rate is the percentage increase in property taxes. So I'll let you know that that will be characterized as an increase in property taxes.
Is it possible that you can make the motions?
Jeez. You can't win with him.
No, that didn't
All right.
need to be part of the motion. I was letting you know the ordinance would reflect that.
Are we good with that motion?
Yes, sir.
We're good with my motion.
All right, we have a motion from the Vice Mayor, a second from Member Nelson. Roll call vote.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Nelson? Yes. Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Motion passes, the ordinance passes unanimously. We have to do that second one? 32, 2022. No. Well, is that what we just had?
All right, I move to approve ordinance number 32-2022, adopting the general and related budgets of the city of Titusville. That's why you get paid more than me, okay? All right, I move that we approve ordinance number 32-2022, adopting the general and related budgets of the city of Titusville for fiscal year 2023 as presented.
Second.
How are we? Okay, I see with one nod.
Okay?
I get a two nod. There we go. I got a motion by Vice Mayor, second by Member Nelson. Roll call vote.
Member Nelson? Yes. Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
32, 2022 passes. City Manager?
On to ordinance 33, 2022, and you'll do cards on this one.
Yep. Anybody want to say anything about 33, 2022 at this point? Member Robinson, your light's on? Nope. Okay. Call the cards, please.
I have two cards. Stan Johnston?
You're getting slower and slower, Mr.
Is
Johnson.
this 3 minutes or 6 minutes?
3. It's
minutes.
one thing.
Okay, I'll have to talk faster, but we're talking about water and sewer rates. This issue we're talking about is money. And by the way, I want to thank Dan Diesel for his comments responding to the zone issue that Mr. Severs brought up. Thank you for doing that. So we're talking about water and sewer, and this is a big issue because we're talking about money and we're talking about misspending of money. And you don't like me here talking about it, but when we're doing the right thing, we're not spraying people with sewage and leaving the fountains on. That's doing the wrong thing. And when we talk about citywide boiled water alerts and don't tell the city what really is happening about the four-log virus, that's doing the wrong thing. That's Mr. Stauffer doing the wrong thing. And so, and when we're talking about the $13.5 million for upgrade of recycled water, and yet we have citywide boiled water alerts that are not being dealt with by the city, that's a big issue. And I'll tell you something else is that I know, as far as I know, is that the city, that Water Resources has hired people that deliberately were hired for, not for their competence and their abilities, but they're for loyalty to Water Resources. And and their ability to take like gag orders and so forth. It's really bad news. And just like, for example, this consent order that the city approved on, that sewer stopped December the 19th. We've got all kinds of witnesses from the police department saying it's untrue. And so what happened is Mr. Stauffer and city manager filed a false report saying it stopped December 19th. No way did it stop December 19th. And he got you guys to approve it. So there's a huge amount of dishonesty, and it has to do with what? Money. So this budget reflects money. And what Joe Robinson and Tom Abadi were talking about, the questions that were raised by Joe Robinson was that what if the values of the houses goes down? We still have to increase the millage rate, is what Mr. Abadi said. We're doomed. Whatever happens, the millage rate goes up. We're just like Britain. I mean, they have huge tax rates. It's ridiculous. We're doomed if you keep always raising the tax rate. That's what was just said. So like Mr. Slusher said, you've got to change. You got to do something different.
Perfect timing. Thank you very much.
Please respond.
Very much, Dan.
No response.
Well, Mr. Johnson, I do want to say this. If you didn't notice last time, because I know you were working on something down there, we had about a 40-minute discussion on all the questions that came up previous.
Thank you, sir.
So I want you to know, we don't just,
Thank you.
Thank
You did good. You're doing good. Thank you, Dan.
Next card, please.
The last card is Tony Scheffelo.
Tony Schiffelow, Tropic Street. When I was here last time, I made the comment that I'm living on Social Security and I just can't go to my government and say, give me more. And it was pointed out to me that, oh, COLA, this year it's going to be. Well, that's because there's a lot of inflation. And I'm here to just say that on the 12 years I've been living on Social Security, for 3 years there was 0 COLA increase. 6 years it was under 2%. 1 year it was only 0.3%, and 3 years it was between 2 and 3.6%. Now there is going to be an increase for next year in Social Security, and I'm here to say it's because of the inflation. Now, that being said, I want to say you just voted to increase the millage rate, which is going to make a property tax increase for everybody. You're fixing to talk now about increasing water and sewage by 3%, I think it is. And next you're going to talk about solid waste going up, and I forget the exact figures. I get it kind of confused with Brevard County, which is going up by 7 or 8% this year, and next year it's going to be an additional 4 or 5%. And then the third year, it will be more on top of that, so that if you add them up, I know this is not the mathematic way you do it, but you add those 3 years up, it's going to be like 39% increase in solid waste. Now, fortunately, I think I don't pay that. I think I pay in Titusville, not to Brevard County. But my point is, I'm standing here talking about, what is it, 7% that the waste is going to go up this year? 3% on the water, that's 10%. The COLA for next year is based on, right now, they're just saying, they're estimating 8.8% increase in Social Security. I'm not the only person in Titusville who's living on Social Security. There are a lot of old people here. And why they want to cut their noses off to spite their face and do away with Social Security, I don't understand. Ted Turner didn't offer a pension. That's why I have Social Security. We did get to count our credits so that we got 40 of them over time. My whole point, I guess, is I know it costs a lot to run a city, and I know you need to raise the money, but where am I going to raise the money to go with my 15% increases? Electric's going up, gas is going up, not to mention food and groceries. I can do without that. I need to lose some weight. But the utility charges, and it's just a little bit here and a little bit there, but you put them all together on one person who's on a fixed income. It's very hard.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other cards? Council, any comments? Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance number 33-2022, amending the schedule of fees for water and sewer service by increasing the charges and rates.
Second.
Have a motion from Vice Mayor, a second from Member Nelson. Roll call vote.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Passes unanimously. Yes.
Yeah. I just want to say to Ms. Schiffelo, I hear what you're saying. I do not want all these things to go up, but, you know, business is business. And I don't know where you get the funds from. I wish I had an answer, because I don't think when you get a certain age, in my heart, a lot of things don't need to be increasing on you because you are on a fixed income. I understand that. It's just, how do you fix that? I think Social Security should certainly be raised more than the 6%, but we're out of control there. But I just want you to know, I hear what you're saying. I sympathize with you. I wish I had the power to do something about it, but we just don't. Okay?
And Ms. Tony, I can probably say to you, may not realize this part, but I'm a retired educator with that part. I'm also on Social Security, and I can't wait for my raise.
Me too.
I know.
Well,
Go ahead, City Manager. I'm sorry.
Can I
I'm
say
sorry.
this?
Member Nelson.
Can I say this? The good news is if your house is similar to the house that they used to show what the rate increase would do, your rate actually went down a little bit. Not enough, but a little bit.
City
This
Manager.
much.
On to ordinance number 34, 2022, which is solid waste and recycling rates.
Council, any comments? Call the cards, please.
We have 2 cards. Stan Johnston is first.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. And solid waste is something I don't know a whole lot about, although I used to work for Public Works. But the statistics that was just presented at the beginning of the meeting, showing that our comparison of our rates with other municipalities shows that we're not in the high range compared to the other places. So I'm wondering what the heck's going on. It doesn't make a lot of sense because of the good service we have. So I don't know what's going on, but it seems like something is happening in our Public Works Department, that they are superior to the other cities, municipalities. And I'm not sure if that's true, but I believe it is. I believe that our Public Works is doing a bang-up job on solid waste, and we need to support them and look what they're doing right. because obviously they're on something wrong because these other cities are not doing, and the county's not doing as good as a job as our city is doing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stan. Next card.
The last card is Tony Schifolo.
I didn't realize I'd get to speak twice, but I'd like to kind of back up Stan. Solid waste, man, these guys are on top of it. The garbage is picked up. I unfortunately make very little garbage because we compost and we recycle. I had to request a second recycle bin because they only pick that up every other week. And they're always full. So I would like to applaud the solid waste division. Garbage does not last on the street. Trash, I guess I should say, not garbage, but the mattresses and the used furniture and the debris that just gets piled on the verge, as they call it in Australia, and it's magically just gone. They bring that claw truck around, and all you have to do is call them if something has been missed. I think it's a great service, and I really don't want to have to pay more for it.
$3.
But I did want to give compliments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. No more cards? Vice Mayor?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance number 34, 2022, amending and increasing the solid waste service charges and rates.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor, a second by Member Nelson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes. Motion passes unanimously.
And the last is 35, 2022, which is Enterprise Fund and Capital Improvements Programs budgets.
Council, any comments? Call the cards, please.
We have one card. It's Stan Johnston.
Stan Johnson, 860.7. And I dragged these signs up here because Enterprise has to do with somehow there's an overlap or something. There's Enterprise, water and sewer are Enterprise funds, and as along with like the marina and stormwater and so forth. These are Enterprise funds. So these signs I have here, well, they relate to Mr. Jordan talks about we're doing the right thing and not selfish and so forth like that. And there's a sign that you've seen before. It has to do with the cover-up of barbaric crimes, spilling millions of gallons of raw sewage into the river and saying you didn't do it, and spraying people with babies with park fountains and so forth. That's something that is a money issue. It's a money issue. It is. And here's another sign that has to do with what's going on with our money is that fraud. Fraud. If you want to look at fraud, if you want to really look it up, it's right here. It's in ORB 8506, page 1374. Mr. Jordan, it talks about Mr. Jordan and Dr. Stokel and Attorney Nelson. So that's something you can look up if you want to research that. And that has to do with the green stuff, money. If you also want to look up, it's talking about our city manager. See, I had a sign very much like this, and he took the sign down, threw it away, and there was no signs up right there at the fountain. So people didn't have any warning signs at all. So he just took the sign down and threw it away. That's our city manager. So that has to do with money, sickness and health and so forth like that. You know, we're talking about how much? 47% was it for public health and safety? And we have this is also Mr. Stauffer, you know, enterprise funds, 176 parts per trillion. He completely ignores it in our budget, ignores it. I mean, there's in our budget now, but he's not taking care of it now. So in other words, this is money, this is people's health, and it's completely ignored. This was completely ignored. In other words, national headlines, Guardian, that's national newspaper. And there's one more sign. And I think if you remember that sign, this sign. And this is showing about spraying people's sewage, and then this was a sign that was used when we had a march on City Hall. Because it's important, the river's important. So I'm especially concerned with the enterprise funds and the citywide boil water alert has to do with this too. We're not taking care of it. It's not being, there was no follow-up done, and you don't know how much it's going to cost and when's it going to be done. You don't know whether your water's safe or not. You don't know. When you drink it, it's too late. The test comes, results later. It's crazy, and I don't know of any other city that's doing it.
Thank you. No other cards? Yes, sir. Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve ordinance number 35, 2022, adopting the Enterprise Fund Capital Improvement Program related budgets of the City of Titusville for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor, second by Member Nelson. Roll call vote.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Petitions and requests from the public.
Tony
Yes, ma'am.
Ciflo. I wanted to speak to something that Nathan mentioned about thinking outside the box and doing something different. We can't just keep taxing the little guys, you know? You just can't keep doing that because it's going to reach a breaking point. I took this seminar the other day, The Economics of Development in Florida, Part 3, with Joe Minicosi. And he analyzes mathematically for cities. Those of you who, anybody else watch that on Zoom? I got the link from you guys. Very interesting. He analyzes mathematically the revenue and the cost of development properties in cities by making these maps. I don't want to waste my time talking about his process. You should have checked it out. And he finds that because in state law, Florida state law, that you're capping homestead property tax rises at, 3%, and where the inflation, and where's the money going to come from? He says your impact fees, the policies on impact fees are not correct and need to be adjusted and looked at. And that's one of the things that the public has been saying to you about all this smart growth and development that we've been having. It's not so smart for the average citizens that we see because our infrastructure gets impacted, our roads get impacted, our schools get overcrowded, and we don't even know what the developers are doing down here with their impact fees. I don't see new sewage pipes being put in except in their development up to the road, and then we have to take care of it from there to the lift stations, et cetera. The impact fees maybe should be someplace you look. And I want to speak about the arts. I live on Social Security, but I, through my wits, can supplement a little bit. I'm a performing artist. I'm wearing a shirt from Eustis, a buskers festival, a street festival. My band is playing Saturday in Cocoa Village on the street in front of an art gallery during a wine and art walk. We're playing Sunday at an original music festival in Ormond Beach. The only time I've performed in Titusville is when I threw a benefit for an organization that I work for and coerced my bandmates to come and play. There's no opportunity for the arts other than a theater, which I love dearly, that plays Broadway chestnuts. Where's original art? Where's any funding for original arts in this town?
Thank you, as always. Next.
Dwight Severs, Titusville. First, I'd just like to clarify that this residential property list, I did not include the apartment complex or the Indian River Avenue near City Hall because they were outliers and I didn't think it was appropriate to include that. There certainly apparently have been a lot of discussions by you with your city manager or staff concerning some of the issues I brought up. I want to make sure and emphasize I did say there's been a lot of successes of the zone. I did say I believe it's time to relook at the zone. I didn't say disband it today or in this budget, because frankly, you have debt you have to cover anyway. I think you still should look at it, because what happened on your public works project of giving it to a certain contractor without any public bidding and not in compliance with state law, selection of the engineer, et cetera, you need to straighten that out. Amen. Why wouldn't you straighten it out? You're just going to bury it? That's not right. I agree with you. It's good that we can compete, and that's a good thing. But I did look at the last year and a half of projects, and a lot of those projects have nothing to do with that whatsoever, and even have insider trading kind of issues. Buying property for $170,000, selling it for $470,000 within 2 years, and getting and assigning the $125,000 donation, gift, whatever you want to call it, from the zone, and flipping the property. Is that what you want to do? Is that really what you want to do? Why aren't you willing to look? I'm not suggesting the zone should be completely done away with. I suggested it need to be looked at, particularly in economic times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Severs? Come back. You know, you said something where you had a lot of innuendos in what you were saying, and you kept looking at me. And one of the things that I do know for a fact, because you have made a false statement about the grant that was given to a developer through the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. What you don't know, or you failed to investigate, was that grant required a development agreement. And in that development agreement, it specifically says that if you use any outside contractors, you have to go out for bids. When you start talking about the North Brevard Economic Development Zone not doing the right thing or doing something illegal, you're putting out falsehoods. It is not true. There is a I'm sorry, I'm still talking.
The truth.
Don't tell me I'm not telling the truth. That's one thing I don't do.
Well, you're telling me I'm not telling the truth.
Well, you are definitely not telling the truth. Go and look at what the process is, and you will find out that everything that it was required to do, and besides, this is the economic development zone. It has its own processes in place, but it still has to abide by the rules and regulations that are out there, and they were abided by. So your assumption, or you stating that nobody did anything, plus you stated that we didn't look into it. If you really heard what we said before, we read every word that you said there, and you specifically talked about the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. We looked into that to make sure, and we really shouldn't even be getting in another organization's business in the first place. We deal with the TIF. We do what is required by law, which we did. The North Brevard Economic Development Zone had a contract, or has a contract with the developer, which requires them to abide by the laws, and that's what they're doing. So I just don't want out there, I just don't want you to throw out there that someone is doing something illegal when they're not. Okay?
Can I respond?
Yeah, reply.
First of all, you're wrong. The contract does have language in it about bids. However, and that was, what?
Well, how am I wrong?
I will demonstrate it to you if you'll let me speak. That contract was signed in June of 2021. In the December 11th meeting of 2020, that contract was discussed by the zone. Mr. Honeycutt already had the contract at that time before the contract had been signed, because he was concerned how he was going to be paid. And I'll show you the minutes. He knew he had that contract and it had already been awarded to him. What competitive bidding has there been? And this was 6 months before the contract was even signed. And what they did, based upon his request, because they were going to withhold 25%, he talked them into reducing that down to 10%. So I'm sorry, but it had already been awarded to him, a board member.
All right,
And
let's, go ahead, finish that last sentence.
It's as clear as can be, and I can show you.
Okay.
All right,
Well, I'll rebut that and just say you're looking at something to find fault, when in fact, if you see what's there, you'll see that everything is above board. You may not like it, but if you have a problem with what they did, you really should be talking to the InBez and not talking to us.
That's exactly right. So we're done talking about it here. All right, because I still am not figuring
want
out
me
why
to
we're talking
respond?
so much about the, no, I'm good. I'm good. I
Okay,
think you responded
thank you.
appropriately. Remember, Nelson, we're going to move on.
Okay.
All right, that's the end of that. I've never expected to talk about the zone as much as I did in these budget hearings. I didn't. So that being said, I'm sure you're up.
Stan Johnston. I want to comment on something that was said. Dr. Stoker was talking about, she didn't give an example about police not responding timely. She mentioned that. And I really do not know of complaints about responding timely in emergency cases. I just don't know of any. I think our police, I don't know, maybe Mr. Lau can think of some, I don't know. But Dr. Stoker, you mentioned that. If you want to play the video back, you mentioned that.
Stop the clock, please. Member Stoker, would you clarify? Because I don't think that was what you
Yeah, that's the wrong
meant.
context. I was saying I'm in favor of small incremental changes so we don't have to face that problem by not having enough funds to fund them.
And I
I
think-
never said that.
And I think you might
okay,
have been
so
noting that
I'm-
other people might complain about such things. And I think you were just throwing out an illustration of complaints from
Okay.
various areas.
Okay.
Certainly, our police response, our fire response, those are things we, as city manager, I know, and the chiefs stay on top of that. And even to the point now of looking for another possible fire station down south, so our response time is appropriate. Our response times are appropriate. I don't think at all that she was saying that.
Okay.
Start the clock.
Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Stoker. Thank you very much, because, okay, that closes that. I wanted to mention about the COLA. I think that the COLA percent increase of everybody the same percent is like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I think that you should look at something other than some kind of graduated, because the higher people get more increases, and they're the ones who less need it. The discussion that was just had about illegality and so forth, I brought legality up many times. In fact, I wrote a letter to Mr. Jordan about legality of what he's been doing regarding the spraying of women and children with sewage, his support of that, participation of that, and the witnesses being the city police department and so forth. The video regarding the his involvement, participation in fraud, that's Mr. Jordan. And Mr. Jordan has also talked about the consent order, saying that the sewage stopped on December the 19th, which is a false report. It's a false report. So we're having a lot of money spent on false reports. And certainly I'm well aware, I'm able to talk to you about that. Anybody wants to discuss that, because that's something that you wanted to discuss about, because it's doing the wrong thing. The city is doing the wrong thing in these cases. Fraud, violations of law, and so forth like that. I've been giving you many of them, and the city doesn't address them. Hopefully we'll go to court. Because in this case, I hope you all start to understand is that, there was, when we were in school, we were told our permanent record. Well, by golly, you know what? I don't need to threaten you about what can happen in the future, because it's already happened. It's already on your permanent record. We got official record books. We got videos of you guys in dishonesty and so forth. So you've already got your permanent record. I don't need to threaten you about anything like that, because you've already done it, and you've done your wrong things, and it's already there. So when you go to court, you're gonna have to
Thank you very much.
ask for another
Appreciate it.
minute.
You want to say anything?
Don't think I'll get it.
All right,
Thank you.
Petitions or requests? 3, 2, 1. Thank everybody for their effort and your input. Meeting adjourned.